A united front, -1, with Trump's tariffs maybe just days away. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Team Canada is missing a star player. Following a First Minister's meeting in Ottawa with the Premiers and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a joint statement was issued by the provincial leaders and the Prime Minister on how the country plans to respond to Donald Trump's tariff threat. But one name was missing: Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. After attending the meeting virtually because she's on vacation in Panama, Smith refused to take part in a news conference and instead issued a statement of her own. In that statement, she said she could, quote, simply not agree to export tariffs on our energy or other products. It's similar to remarks she has made already when asked about Ottawa's plan to use energy exports as leverage in any trade war with the United States, such as curtailing exports of oil and gas or imposing an export tax.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about, she was asked specifically if in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think, what do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas that's owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on.
For weeks now, two provincial premiers have taken the lead on making the Canadian case against the Trump tariff threat: Danielle Smith in Alberta and Doug Ford in Ontario, but recently cracks have appeared. Doug Ford has said he is willing to cut electricity exports from Ontario to northern U.S. states, and he has said that any American tariffs must be matched by the Canadian side. Speaking at the news conference, Premier Ford said he respects Premier Smith's choice, but Canada should come first.
That's what's unique about our group. You know, everyone has their interest at heart, and I respect Premier Smith. I respect that she's concerned about protecting her energy, and that's her choice. That is her choice. But I have a little different theory. I have a different theory that protect your jurisdiction, but country comes first. Canada's a priority. And I don't believe in jeopardizing one sector or another. Premier Smith's oil is Ontario's auto sector, right? So again, we all have different views, and we can respect each other's views. But at the end of the day, when the tariffs come, it's going to affect Albertans. It's going to affect people from BC and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, all the way down the road. No one's exempt from that. And all I believe in, you know, if it comes to that, let's have the tools in our toolbox to react, to send a strong message. But it's not going to be all of a sudden one province or one territory is exempt on this. When Donald Trump comes at us, he's not going to say, well, let's not worry about Ontario, they're good people, or Alberta. He's coming full tilt at Canadians as a whole. And that's one thing we have to understand.
Premier Smith's decision to be the outlier as the only leader to refuse to sign this statement is even rippling through the early Liberal leadership race. Chrystia Freeland, the former Minister of Finance, is expected to announce soon that she will run for the Liberal leadership in a posting on social media today. Freeland described herself as a proud daughter of Peace River, Alberta, and asked Pierre Poilievre if he is going to, quote, stand up for Canada or stand with Danielle Smith. But for the Alberta Premier, the idea of export taxes on Alberta energy, taxes that would go to Ottawa and not Alberta, is a total non-starter. In her opinion, Alberta has only one customer for its energy, the United States, because of decisions made by politicians in Eastern Canada.
Here's the thing I find irritating about Eastern politicians making that argument. The reason I find it irritating is because we could have had Energy East, which would have expanded our ability to support our friends in Eastern Canada and also been an export market off the East Coast. We could have had Northern Gateway, which would have expanded and supported export markets in a more substantial way off the West Coast. And Eastern politicians advocated against those things. And so we went to work on expanding our access to the United States with additional egress, with twinning, with looping. We did that because the rest of the country wasn't interested in having that conversation. So to now make the argument that that's a point of leverage is going to be very, very irritating, not only to me, but also to my fellow Albertans.
Just 2 days ago, Donald Trump said he plans to create an external revenue service to collect tariffs and other revenues from foreign countries that he says haven't been paying their fair share. Donald Trump will be sworn in as President of the United States again on Monday. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
With our friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube is here, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Probably a quick chat today because the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is doing a news conference. He's speaking in French right now. This is about the capital gains inclusion rate. He is promising to cancel that planned hike, but he will certainly be asked about the developments, I think, involving Premier Smith and news about the carbon tax today with Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland leaked to the media that both of those candidates for the Liberal leadership are going to backtrack on the carbon tax, something that we talked at great length about yesterday on this show. Hi, Michael.
Hey, how are you, Rob?
I'm great. I really would like to get your thoughts, though, on Premier Smith's decision not to sign that statement because some people are accusing her of putting Donald Trump's interests first and selling out Canada. What do you think?
No, it's quite the opposite. And again, it's not because we've known each other. She and I have known each other a long time, been friends for many years. The reason she's doing is she doesn't want Alberta, especially the oil and gas sector, to just become a pawn in this game. I fully understand her position. I mean, I think that any premier who realizes that they have a viable entity or industry or natural resource that could be used for, sometimes beneficial things, but then can also be used as a bargaining chip is a terrible idea and it's a terrible plan. And that's why she's come out on several interviews, and perhaps you've discussed some of them or even played clips from them, where she's actually directly said that, if the federal government attempts to do something like this, well, they're going to have a real hassle on their hands and possibly, it's hard to say, a real political problem, possibly a legal matter, who knows? It really depends how far they go. But I get it. I understand why she's doing it. And she's also using a position which is, again, not dissimilar to something I wrote about in the Post very recently, where I said that, we talked about it, where Pierre Poilievre, if he becomes prime minister, and Donald Trump, when they have negotiations, you have to, if you want to negotiate like Trump, as I wrote, you have to negotiate like Trump. And basically, I think Smith's doing the same thing. She's protecting her own interests. She's protecting a valuable sector that Alberta relies on. She's also protecting a sector which, as she correctly said to, Melanie Joly and other leading liberals, you have to sort of consider where Line 5 directly goes in. It not only goes into the United States, that being what would be affected here if the federal liberals use energy as a tool to go against, Trump's plan for 25% tariffs. It doesn't just go in the U.S. It also hits Canada as well. It goes through Ontario, goes through Quebec. It's all there. I understand her position completely. And no, she's not being traitorous, as some have said. She's not being anti-Canadian. She's being pro-Albertan. And yes, whether you like it or not, pro-Canadian too.
Okay. Let me ask you quickly about something else, because I really do think that this Liberal leadership race is going to come down to a choice between Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland.
Absolutely.
I don't give any of the other candidates, with all due respect, much of a chance.
No.
But now, for example, in John Iveson's column in the National Post today, it's been leaked. Mark Carney will cancel the carbon tax if he wins the leadership and becomes prime minister. And it's been leaked to us, and we have confirmed it here at News Radio and City News, that Chrystia Freeland would do the same thing. After defending the carbon tax for the last 6+ years, what do you think of this? Is an epic backtrack by these leading Liberals. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's an epic backtrack, and it's hypocritical as well. I mean, Freeland in cabinet has strongly defended it. I never heard her really come out and slam it. And Carney on the outside, if you look at his interest in COP and various other things and all the issues that he's talked about, including net zero emissions, which has been one of his big stalking horses, these two have never come out against the carbon tax. I would say that they were probably as favorable about it when it was there, as anything in public as any others. Now, sure, in private, I don't know what they were thinking. I think politically, they probably realized that when the country started to turn against it, it was a problem. But ideologically, at least now, there's no proof that they had issues with it until it didn't become politically viable, which is why they're coming out and attacking it, bombing against it, and saying that they're going to cancel it. Again, they're hoping that people will look at as well, this is the Liberal Party's break with Justin Trudeau and the crippling carbon tax he brought in. You should look to us as people or as Liberals who are going to change the course of this nation. All that basically Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have to do is that we were always opposed to the carbon tax. We remain opposed to the carbon tax, and we remained opposed to it because it was hurting individuals and families, not the Liberal Party's chances of re-election. That's how you fight it.
Okay. Look, thank you so much for the time today. An abbreviated conversation for us. I know you understand. We'll get to Pierre Poilievre's news conference from Vancouver in just a few moments, and we will catch up next week, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure as always. Take care.
Bye-bye. Michael Taube with us every week on Thursdays. Syndicated columnist, speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Take you to a live news event out of Vancouver. The Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, talking about the capital gains inclusion rate, the increase to the capital gains inclusion rate. He would stop that, he says, if he wins the next election. And he is sure to be asked about Team Canada and, I suspect, carbon taxes as well. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
I'm going to take you to a live news event. The Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is on the West Coast today. He is in Delta, British Columbia, and he is taking questions from news reporters. Let's listen to this.
Hello, my name's Yvette Brand. I'm from CBC. Could I ask that you also answer in French for my colleagues who...
yes, of course.
Thank you very much.
Oui, merci.
Yeah. You could be Prime Minister within a few months in this country. Would you be willing to impose export tax or restrictions on Canadian oil? Because you'll be dealing with Trump's threats of tariffs. This would put pressure on the Trump administration. Or is this off the table for you as it is for Danielle Smith in Alberta?
Well, first of all, I think that the first thing that President Trump should do when he gets into the Oval Office is to send a big bouquet of flowers to the Liberal government in Ottawa. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants in Canada, the Liberals have forced Canadians to sell almost all of our energy to the United States, giving President Trump massive leverage in making these tariff threats. Had they allowed the Energy East and Northern Gateway pipelines to go ahead, had they rapidly approved LNG plants to sell the natural gas that Japan, Greece, Germany, and other countries were looking for us to sell them directly, we wouldn't have to give 100%, almost 100%, of our hydrocarbons to the Americans at discount prices, and you wouldn't have had to ask me that question. Because I would have answered, in that scenario, I would have answered, we'll go around the Americans. We'll sell our energy directly. But that's something that the Liberals would not let us do. Freeland supported killing the Energy East pipeline, which would have moved 1 million barrels of Western oil to the St. John refinery and off to Europe, by the way, which would have helped defund Putin. Carney testified in the industry committee that he was against the Northern Gateway pipeline to take Canadian oil to Asia without going through the United States, by the way, while his company buys pipelines in the Middle East and in Brazil. How unpatriotic is that? So, frankly, the Liberals have got us in this mess by making us beholden to the Americans and giving them, the Americans, our energy at massive price discounts, selling our oil for $15 typically below the market rate, and selling them natural gas for $4 per million metric British thermal units when they're going for $13 in Europe. That is economic sadomasochism. And I will put an end to it. When I'm Prime Minister, we will repeal the anti-energy law C-69. We will rapidly approve LNG plants and any other private sector unsubsidized investments to expand our ability to sell our energy without going through the Americans. And I will unite our people. We see right now that not only have the Liberals weakened our economy, now they're resorting to dividing our people. Divide and conquer. Right when the president is threatening us with tariffs, what is the first thing the Liberal Party of Freeland and Carney think to do? Divide Canadians. Divide our provinces. We don't need to be divided. We need to be united. All provinces. All Canadians. Let's put Canada first. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. La première chose que le président Trump devrait faire en devenant le président des États-Unis, c'est d'envoyer des fleurs aux libéraux
so let me
du
jump
Canada.
in there because he's going to just repeat his answer in French. A question from a CBC reporter. This is a news conference that's happening in Delta, British Columbia, and he was asked about the idea of an export tax. An export tax that would be collected by the federal government on Alberta's oil and gas. And the question being, would he put an export tax on oil and gas? I don't know if he ever really answered that question, but he certainly did, I think, try and differentiate his energy policy from what he viewed as a failed energy policy under the Liberals, with harsh criticism for the two leading contenders for the Liberal leadership, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. So more from Pierre Poilievre coming up, and our Newsday panel right after the news. So much to talk about today with our panelists. The latest breaking news coming up next. Very busy news day today, keeping you right up to date here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
And the gang's all here. Today it includes Chris Day, the president of Winston Wilmot. Hi, Chris. Good to hear from you today.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Busy. It's busy around here. And Tim Powers. Tim Powers is chair of Summa Strategies. How are you, Tim?
Tim Powers is my Mexican cousin. I'm fine, though. I'm good. Thanks, Rob.
That's good. It's good to hear from everyone. So look, let's start with the big news coming out of this First Minister's meeting yesterday, and gather your reaction to Premier Danielle Smith's refusal to be part of the overall plan to deal with the Trump tariff threat. What's your reaction to that, Chris Day?
Well, I didn't see anything in the communique itself that was, so objectionable from, my Central Ontarian, perspective. that Alberta couldn't have signed off on. But clearly there were some conversations that we didn't see that the Premier of Alberta felt, putting energy on the table, or whether it's oil and gas or whatever the case may be, was not on for her. And that has we have to respect that there will be openness to certain things in certain parts of the country that may not fly in other parts of the country. That's part of the nature of Canadian federalism. So, why she didn't sign on to the communique, which was rather sort of benign. I think she's got some fish in the fryer that she's hoping will pay off for her province. And some discussions clearly underway with, side trips to Mar-a-Lago and such. But hopefully we'll have a unified approach here in the main, which I think is possible still.
Okay, she was the only leader not to sign that statement. She didn't take part in the news conference. She issued her own statement before Mr. Trudeau had even finished speaking. What's your reaction? Okay, yeah, I know. What's your reaction there, Tim, to this?
You probably. I didn't know Panama was a hot spot in January. Maybe better to go there before Trump takes it over, I suppose. Look, I come from an oil-producing province. Oil's pretty damn important to us in Newfoundland and Labrador. We signed on to the communique, as did Scott Moe. I get why she's not signing on to the communique. We only need to watch the challenges that Jason Kenney, who had won the strong majority, had before her. If you don't go to the wall in Alberta for oil and gas, they put you on the wall and say you didn't do enough. So she's playing to her domestic political audience.
Playing to her domestic political audience on social media. I mean, she's being called a traitor. She's being accused of selling out Canada. She's a talking point in the Liberal leadership campaign now. Whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? Canada's side or Danielle Smith's side? That's what Chrystia Freeland asked today on social media.
Yeah, I don't.
What do you think of
the? Sorry, I was going to say I don't think Chrystia Freeland is going to harbor much weight in the criticism against Danielle Smith.
Okay. What do you think of the aftermath of this? Christe, what do you think of the aftermath of this, the reaction to it?
Well, I was kind of chuckling that both Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney are sort of trying to outdo one another as the great champions of Alberta and the great children of a province that the Liberals have repeatedly, over and over and over again, done things to their resource sector that, are just completely detested in that part of the country. So I think Tim is absolutely bang on. This is all about internal Alberta politics, and I don't think we need to get too exercised about it.
So, she said, her own words were, it could be the start of a national unity crisis. Is it the start of a national unity crisis? What do you think? Or are we making too much of this?
Are you asking me? I would say, look,
Tim,
national unity is fragile at most times. I think actually the opposite is happening. Everybody other than Premier Smith, on just this one issue, to be fair to her, as far as we know, is on board with fighting back on Trump. I think we can't call a national unity crisis yet until we see if we're going to have tariffs levied against us and how Canada responds to all of that. So you always got to be careful. She could be playing with matches here, but I don't know that she's stroked the match on the flint yet, and things are up in smoke.
All right. Okay. Is she playing with matches, Chris, to follow up on what Tim said there? What do you think?
I mean, there has been a long and storied history in Alberta politics of making Ottawa the bad, the bad guy in things. Yep. And Ottawa has not helped itself in many cases.
Sure.
But I think there is always a sort of simmering in the underbrush when it comes to the resource economy of Alberta.
Okay, look, we'll pause here, and then we'll focus a little bit more on this Liberal leadership race. Mark Carney versus Chrystia Freeland. I mean, if it comes down to those two, and a lot of people think it's going to come down to those two, who has the advantage and what factors would go into that advantage? Is it caucus support? Is it name recognition? Is it who best represents, say, change for the Liberal Party? When we come back, I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Chris Day is here from Winston-Wilmot and Tim Powers of Summa Strategies. Just a few minutes ago, Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, posted this on social media. Quote, "How about this for building a Team Canada approach? 1, stop threatening the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Albertans and Canadians via an energy export tax or ban. 2, immediately start construction on the Northern Gateway and Energy East pipeline to diversify our customer base to Europe, Asia, and our own country. 3, tell Germany, Japan, and the rest of the world that there is, in fact, a business case for Canadian oil and gas to be sold to them. 4, repeal the unconstitutional and job-killing production cap, electricity regulations in C-69. 5, treat with respect and as an equal partner the Alberta taxpayers that have been transferring hundreds of billions to Quebec, the Maritimes, and even Ontario for decades. Let's start there on building our Team Canada approach, shall we?" End quote. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta. So it's all sunshine and lollipops in the Federation today, everyone. Okay, let's turn our attention to the Liberal leadership race. Would we all agree that it's going to be Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland in the end? Yes?
Well, Mark, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, sorry, Dan. I think they are clear front runners. So,
yeah, okay. If it's those
Rob,
two, I think it's those two.
You're not cheering for your champion, Cape Breton there, Jaime Batista. What's wrong with you, man? You won't be able to go back to Cape Breton. Yes, of course, it's Carney. And
no, good luck to him. I'd be if I were him, just given the way the boundaries were redrawn for his riding, I would be more interested in saving the furniture in the backyard than running for leadership. But that's my own opinion. Okay, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland. Who has the advantage, and why would you say that? What factors go into that? Tim Powers.
I think that'll become clearer in the first couple of weeks of the campaign. I think, as you have seen among Liberals, particularly this past week, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Carney because, in their view and in the view of others, he performed well on Jon Stewart. He didn't present himself as, a boring central banker. But I think the great unknown about Mark Carney is how will he survive the ups and downs of the campaign. I think if he has a good 2 or 3 weeks to start, he will probably be seen as the front runner. Because, look, Chrystia Freeland, apart from her letter, and campaigns aren't run on letters. This isn't Martin Luther in the 1500s. Yes. Is not a great campaigner. Is not a great political communicator. If the Prime Minister comes across as a enthusiastic drama teacher, she comes across as kind of a lecturing, a lecturing, scolding school teacher herself. And people don't like her style. And to win against Pierre Poilievre, to compete against Pierre Poilievre, they're going to need somebody who can communicate much more effectively with Canadians.
Okay. What do you think, Chris? Who has the advantage here if it's those two?
The advantage will go to whomever can signal a departure from Justin Trudeau and his most unpopular policies. And so to that end, I would like to welcome both Ms. Freeland and Mr. Carney to the camp of earth-hating, climate change-denying, slack-jawed troglodytes.
Neanderthals.
Who
what next? Are they going to take their kids on a road trip next? My gosh.
I mean, right? Like, consumer carbon taxes are apparently no longer needed in this country because climate change is no longer a thing, apparently. And apparently the rebate is such that we don't all get more money back than we pay in. It turns out, that was all just Justin Trudeau's narrative, right? So I mean, this entire thing is comical because the Liberals have a challenge that they've got to excite their own voter base, and then 2 or 3 weeks later potentially go out and face the broader electorate, who are almost uniformly opposed to everything that the Liberals have been doing in the last little while. So it's not going to be an easy dance for whomever wins this thing. And, it's especially uneasy to have either one of these people try and distance themselves from Justin Trudeau, in that Chrystia Freeland was his deputy and chief champion for the last few years. And Mark Carney is being supported by Team Trudeau. Like, all of the people that put Justin Trudeau in office, and Justin Trudeau himself, are backing Mark Carney, apparently. So, it's all silliness, frankly.
Okay, so if it's a change election, and there's the polling shows it very clear, Canadians want change, that they think this government has run its course for any number of reasons, and one of them might just be the simple passage of time, which is completely natural in politics. I think one of the factors is who best represents change. Who can make that case? I'm real change. From Justin Trudeau, Who best represents that, do you think?
In that
Chris?
group? By a small margin, Mark Carney, because the one thing
But it's a small margin.
Right. Yeah, the one thing he can say, I wasn't part of cabinet, I wasn't an elected MP, but as has often been pointed out, he was advising the Prime Minister, he's helped the Prime Minister, but he wasn't elected. I think what they also want to do, Rob, and that, it's going to be tough for them to do, is reframe the election around who's best to manage the relationship with Donald Trump. Thus why they're rushing out with, we don't support carbon tax, to Chris's point. Welcome to the battle. I'm sure the 150 odd Liberal MPs who've got scars and wounds are delighted that this finally happening today. If it had happened a year ago, their fortunes might be different. Anyway, Carney will most likely, with marginal difference between Freeland, best represent the outside.
Okay. Who best represents change? I'm not Justin Trudeau. Either of them? Does one have Tim seems to think that Mark Carney has a slight advantage. What do you think, Chris?
Well, neither one of them has
neither
a claim
one
on
of
this.
them. Okay.
Carney has long been a very vocal proponent of carbon taxes. He has praised the Canadian carbon tax framework as a model for the world. He has endorsed increasing carbon taxes over time. He has supported global carbon taxes. Like, anyone who is looking for carbon tax relief in the next election should not buy what the people around Mark Carney are selling, because it is all illusion. And Chrystia Freeland, frankly, will have a very tough road to hoe to distance herself from Justin Trudeau, because she has been his biggest enabler for the last decade. If it's a change
she
election,
she was there before he even became Prime Minister, right? She was the first kind of big name. Okay.
One of the first on board. So, yeah.
We'll stop here. Be right back.
Election, they're going down.
Okay. We'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. This is our Newsday panel on News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Okay, it is our Newsday panel. Chris Day, president of Winston Wilmot. Tim Powers is the chair of Summa Strategies, also happens to be managing director at Abacus Data. Only because we never ever get to talk about Newfoundland politics, let's just spend a few minutes on it. It's very interesting what's been happening. And Tim Powers is kind of like our Newfoundland and Labrador correspondent here on this show. So I believe there are 7 federal ridings in Newfoundland and Labrador. How many of them, do you know offhand, are Liberal held right now, Tim? 6. Okay. So 6 Liberal, 1 Conservative. Is that right?
Cliff Small, yeah, the Conservative up around Gander.
Okay. So how many out of those 6 Liberal held ridings right now, how many of the Liberal MPs are not running again?
5.
5. Wow. Holy cow. Okay.
Then the one that is staying is in St. John's East, Joanne Thompson. As Chris probably well knows from his days in politics, St. John's East is the one seat that can be competitive. There was a local poll before the Prime Minister stepped down showing Joanne Thompson, before she also got put into cabinet, that's why she went into cabinet, though she does have some skills, to be fair to her, with a slight lead over the Conservatives and the NDP. So realistically, Rob, if you're getting, let me get to where I think you were going. Some of those 5 Liberal MPs, like Yvonne Jones and Seamus O'Regan, had, Seamus declared a while ago, Yvonne Jones has been in politics for a long time. So the others have been in politics and active, but I would suggest that probably 66% of the 5 who aren't running again could see the writing on the wall, and the other 2 legitimately were just tired and done. The Conservatives could win if the election were today, all 7 seats there, because without incumbents, as your listeners well know, even when a popular party is unpopular, incumbents do tend to give you a boost. But my, oh my, the writing is on the wall for a lot of those Newfoundland seats based on these retirements.
Wow. Newfoundland and Labrador. What do you think of that, Chris? Going potentially blue, a blue sweep maybe?
How far we have come from the ABC days, right?
Right.
I will defer to Tim Power's knowledge of Newfoundland and Labrador any day of the week. But all the modeling that I've seen on all the recent polling shows, a blue wave, not only in Newfoundland and Labrador, but across Atlantic Canada as well.
Across Atlantic Canada,
that have not been, in places that have not been competitive for Conservatives in many years. So, again, if change is the ballot question, I think the Liberals federally are screwed.
Okay. Wrap it up there for today. Who knows what we'll be talking about in a few weeks from now. Thank you so much. Speak soon. All the best. Yeah, bye-bye. Tim Powers is chair of Summa Strategies, managing director, Abacus Data. Chris Day, president at Winston Wilmot. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback coming up right after the news. We're going to talk about Danielle Smith and her refusal to sign that statement and not be on Team Canada in the face of the Trump tariff threat. Want your opinion on that? Right after the news. Let's talk back on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today, tariffs and Alberta and the rest of Canada and Team Canada. Tariffs, Alberta, the rest of Canada, Team Canada. Here are the questions. Call right now. Let me know your opinion. The sooner you call, the sooner we'll put you on the air. 1-833-668-2577. In refusing to sign a statement about how Canada will respond if Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States, is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith selling out Canada? Or is she looking out for the best interests of the people of Alberta, or both? Have your say. Share your opinion. Our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. This is why you need to listen to this show. It was just 2 days ago. We did a whole talk back about Alberta and the West and why Alberta is so upset with the rest of Canada, and you had a lot to say about that, and I hope you had a lot to say about this today because this is a major development in this story. And then just yesterday, we did a whole talk back asking you, what would you think if the Liberals canceled the carbon tax ahead of the next election? And now it's been leaked to the media, and it's in the news today. Both Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland are going to cancel the carbon tax if they become the next leader of the Liberal Party. We asked you about that yesterday, and it's in the news today. There is a method to the madness. So look, it's all over the news. It is all over the news, all over social media. Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, the leader of the United Conservative Party there, the only leader in all of Canada not to sign this statement agreeing to Ottawa's plan to respond to Trump's tariffs. And some people are calling Danielle Smith a traitor. They are calling her a traitor on social media. They are accusing her of selling out Canada, of siding with Donald Trump over Canada, or accusing her of putting the oil and gas industry ahead of the national interest. There are others, of course, on the other side. The other side being the Alberta side, that she is standing up for Alberta. She is standing up against a government in Ottawa that has been openly hostile to Alberta. One columnist in one of the Alberta papers today calls Danielle Smith Alberta's Iron Lady. That Alberta has found its own version of Margaret Thatcher, and she's the Iron Lady of Alberta. And they say the people in the rest of Canada are all in favor now of using Alberta's vast energy wealth in their time of need, but the same can't be said when Alberta needed help and the rest of Canada, east and west, turned its back on Alberta. But she's the outlier. She is very much the outlier. Some people are noting Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, lots of grievances with the government of Ottawa. Yet he signed the statement. Francois Legault, all sorts of bad things to say about Justin Trudeau, but he signed the letter. Doug Ford and Danielle Smith, they seem to be getting along so well. Doug Ford signed the letter. Danielle Smith didn't, and she didn't go to the meeting. She's on vacation in Panama, didn't go to the news conference, issued a statement instead. How do you see this? What is your opinion on this? If you're in Ontario, if you're in Nova Scotia, what's your opinion on the Alberta Premier's decision here? And if you're in Alberta, what is your opinion, of course, on what your Premier's done here? 1-833-668-2577. Wayne in Calgary up first. Let's get right to the calls here today. Wayne. Hello, Wayne.
Hi, Rob. I'm in 100% agreement with the Premier here.
Why?
Okay. Because we didn't get the same support from a Liberal government and B the rest of the population of Canada, in the East. Nobody wanted pipelines. They basically landlocked Alberta in, and now they want to kind of come back to Alberta and say, hey, maybe we were a little quick on the way that we dealt with you, but we really need you now. Can you help us out? I don't think a lot of Albertans are particularly against the Premier. I think people I've talked to suggest to me that there's more support than not. Yes, we are Canadian, but we expect the rest of Canada to help us out too. And in her news statement today, she's inviting the rest of Canada. Okay, well, if we're really at that,
right? If we're all on the same page, if we're all on Team Canada, why aren't we doing this, and the other thing, right?
Right. Like sign off on that, and maybe we can talk about signing off on the other thing. But my guess is that if she asks the federal government that is in power right now to sign off on that, they may have trouble doing that. One of the other questions I wanted to ask of you, though, is your guest this morning, Chris, I think it was, said that Newfoundland had signed on and that they have a lot of oil. But how does their oil get out of Newfoundland? Is it off of a barge, like an oil tanker, or is it a pipeline?
Well, I imagine it's by ship, right? I would imagine it's by ship. Right, it's offshore oil, right?
Therein lies the difference. Really, a different situation. And shame on him for saying that.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Good for your call, Wayne in Calgary. Danveer up next. Danveer, your opinion on what Danielle Smith did. What's your opinion here?
Hey, Rob.
Hi. Good.
I think if we look at, if we listen to her statement. So what she's saying is actually more logical than what the others are trying to say. Like they say, like they're wearing the hats. Like I don't remember what does it say. Like Canada's not for sale, but like how is Canada for sale? Like, first of the question is it like what's happening with that? Like, it's just the tariff threat, and the tariff threat that hasn't actually been there. So if we do not have the counter tariff the same day they have their tariff, the sky is not going to fall. They could have waited for what they actually put the tariffs on, then they go for the discussions, right? So I don't know, like it's really weird.
Okay,
that,
let me ask you this. She is being accused of putting Alberta's interest before the national interest. Do you think that's what she's doing?
No, like listen to her statement. Doesn't even say anything about that. What she's saying is just logical.
Okay. All right, Dan Vera, got to run. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. I want to fit in as many calls as we can over the next, well, a little less than 2 hours now. So have your say. We're talking about Danielle Smith here, 4 days away from what could be a great economic threat to Canada with these tariffs. Join the discussion. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What is your opinion on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's refusal to sign a letter about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs? She was the only premier to refuse to sign that letter, so she's being accused of not being a team player, that she's not on Team Canada. Rick in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Rob.
Hi,
Look,
Rick.
what if you're right? She's absolutely 100% right. The rest of them are doing what the Liberals want. And her position is actually the Canadian position. To draw Trump further into a fight by this action is idiotic, in my view. And it's kind of breast thumping. It's like a super heavyweight going against a flyweight. I mean, like Ian Lee said, they have a $28 trillion gross national
GDP,
product.
yeah.
We're
GDP,
way over
yeah.
our head. And these people are just, they're trying to do something they've been convinced of that I think is 100% wrong. I think she's 100% right, and she is Team Canada. The rest of them are Team whatever they're playing, including our own premier here in Nova
Lemmings,
Scotia.
maybe. Okay. Well, I would direct you. There's a really interesting column today in the Calgary Herald about this, and the writer Chris Varco reached out to a number of experts in international trade and international energy markets. For example, there's a quote in here from Fen Hampson, very well respected international affairs professor, Carleton University, co-chair of the expert group on Canada-U.S. relations. What did he say about this idea of weaponizing energy, or putting an export tax on energy? Quote, right in the paper today, using the hockey analogy, why score a set of goals on your own team? It is, quite frankly, the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's from an Eastern Canadian academic, calling that statement basically that all the other premiers signed yesterday, except Danielle Smith, the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I missed that, and I'd like to concur.
Okay. Yeah, well, there's a couple of killer quotes in that one that I'll be talking about as we make our way through the day. We have some phone lines available. Surprised to see that. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Eric in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Eric, you're on the air. What's your opinion here?
Rob, how are you today? Thanks for taking the
Eric.
call.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, number one, Danielle Smith isn't a traitor. She's a Canadian patriot, just like any one of the premiers that are leading their respective provinces.
Okay.
Does she like to play the drama in politics? Absolutely. Her past record shows that. Is what she's putting out there a surprise? No, it's nothing new. It's what any other leader's been stating about, as well as Pierre Poilievre stating about LNG, for example, in Canada. We got plenty. We could be exporting it. We're not helping our neighbors. We got to do more about that. the reality is the feds don't have everybody on the same playing field. They're always doing backroom negotiations with each province to their own gain. So they create the environment that makes everybody, not comfortable with the other partners in our society here across Canada. You can take Newfoundland and Nova Scotia as examples and pull them out and look at the natural resource fights that they had to go through. There was clawbacks because the fact that the oil and gas out of both of these provinces was under the ocean, even though it was inside the 200-mile limit, was a clawback by the feds because it wasn't on the grounds or under the ground of the province, like Alberta is. And you can take the same attitude towards Quebec. Why weren't they clawed back? The original power that they were getting was from another province. It wasn't even it wasn't even part of their own ground. So, and Danielle goes on about, how about a pipeline east and, it's all the east that's against Alberta. No, it isn't. I mean, the pipeline had one small spot to run through, and that's the lower part of Quebec. And that's where the stop was. So you can take it from there. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, that's one of the great shames of the Energy East is that most of the pipe is already in the ground for that.
Yeah, exactly. That small little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You seem very well informed on it, Eric. Thank you for your opinion. Okay. We'll stop here. Again, we are talking about Danielle Smith and her refusal to sign that letter about how Canada would respond to U.S. tariffs. The only premier to refuse to sign that letter. And now she's accused of not being on Team Canada and worse, called a traitor, selling out Canada. What's your opinion on this? Is it that she's defending her province from a government in Ottawa that's been hostile to Alberta's interests for years, if not decades? It's a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. Your call's coming up. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
All the premiers except for one, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, signed a letter. The Prime Minister signed it as well. This is how we will respond to U.S. tariffs. So now Danielle Smith is accused of not being a team player. She's not part of Team Canada. What would you say? She says she can't sign a letter because it still includes the possibility of export taxes on Alberta exports of oil and gas. Let's go to Tony on the air from Calgary. Hi, Tony. What are your thoughts, Tony? Go ahead. Hello, Tony. Can you hear me? All right, we'll go back to Tony. Let's go to Colin on the line from Calgary. Hello, Colin. You're on the air. What's your opinion, please?
Oh, hi, Rob. Yeah, my opinion is, I'm astounded that there's no accountability for Trudeau in the past, let's say, 2 months after the tariffs were announced. First of all, the Liberals went on this spree of, using MAGA as an insult word, all the while knowing, in the past number of years, all the while knowing that it is possible that Trump could have become president. Well, lo and behold, he became president. And then, Trudeau goes on this little self-indulgent speech on saying it's too bad that America elected a man and not a woman. So I think we're at the point now where it's astounding that any of these premiers would not look at the Prime Minister as part of the reason Canada's under attack by a new administration.
Yeah, and then he announced a new expert panel on Canada-U.S. relations and the trading relationships between our two countries. He just announced it today, and it includes people like Rachel Notley and Jean Charest, and he's announcing this today. It's Thursday, the 16th of January. It's 4 days. It's literally 4 days before Donald Trump is sworn in. He's been promising these tariffs for weeks. And on Thursday, before the Monday that he's sworn, now you appoint this special panel to deal with this situation? Leaving a little late in the game, I think.
Yeah, completely. And he's so unself-aware. He doesn't know what he's doing. Canada is really backed into a corner because of this individual, and it's not too soon before we get some mature leadership. And if I was Danielle Smith, and I'm not a Westerner by, where I come from Ontario, but I'm not even sure I would have shown up to the meeting. I think they're most of the premiers there. I honestly think the whole discussion at the end of the day was pointless, clueless, and the only one, and she's standing up for the rights of the people that she represents. Yet Trudeau throws the whole country under the bus by tweaking the nose of a future president, and everybody around the president can't stand him too. So he's really done us a disservice. And the fact that he can't resign and allow Canada to go to an election to have a non-lame duck prime minister is, I guess, his final hurrah to Canada, which he's really led into the ground for the past, going on 9 years anyway.
All right. Okay. So, thank you for calling. Good to hear from you. Yeah, it's a fine mess. 4 days away from what could be a huge economic threat to Canada. Lame duck prime minister. Parliament prorogued. Will remain so for months. The two leading lights of the Liberal Party, I guess, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, are pursuing their own political ambitions. And now we have regional conflicts flaring up and boiling over. But at the center of it all today is the Premier of Alberta, the only leader who didn't sign that statement. She explains in some length why she feels she couldn't do that. But what is your opinion on her decision to refuse to sign the statement? Your calls after the news.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're asking for your opinion on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's refusal to sign the Premier's letter about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs. The only Premier who refused to sign that letter. She stands accused of not being a team player, that she's not on Team Canada. What is your opinion? 1-833-668-2577. Bernie's in Mississauga. Hello, Bernie. What's your opinion, Bernie?
How you doing, Rob?
Good, Bernie.
Subject. Canada's a sovereign nation, and we're under a very big threat coming a couple of more days. So I can't see why she wouldn't get on board and be united with the rest of the premiers in this country to say that Canada is not for sale. I think what she's doing is she's trying to appease the Americans over the Canadians, and I think that the federal government, what they should do, if she doesn't capitulate, is pass the Emergency Act and take over the government of Alberta.
Really? Oh, don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. What about those who would say she's defending her province and her province's most important industry, and she doesn't think that an export tax is the proper thing to do?
Not just Alberta. The resources in this country belong to all the people, and we have equalization payments and everything else to make it equal in this country. So if she got her head up her backside, she shouldn't be allowed to go and distort all the progress that we got to try to make to stand up to Donald Trump.
In fact, under the Constitution, and I'm sure you know this, Bernie, under the Constitution in this country, the natural resources are under the ownership of the provinces and under the exclusive domain of the provinces.
Yeah, well, the thing is it's all Canadians. From coast to coast are Canadians, and what belongs to Canada belongs to Canada. It just doesn't belong to Alberta or her special interest groups or the oil lobby that she's trying to please. And when he puts on 25% tariffs and the rest of this country nosedives, then you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, all right. Let's go to Francis in Listowel. Francis, thanks for calling. What's your opinion here, Francis?
Well, I have a few opinions. How will I go about it? We know we have a bully south of us, and unless we stand united, we'll fall. Divided, we will fall. We all know a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So, first of all, we have to take care of what's south of us, and we need to stand united. And the problem is we all have a different problems with their trade policies. It's the way I see it. And that can be taken on a little bit later, once we take care of our biggest problem south of us.
Okay. What about this idea? She is defending the people of Alberta and a very important industry to the people of Alberta and, quite frankly, to the economic welfare of Canada.
Yes. But if we're divided, you know what happens? The bully takes out the small one. So everybody has to stand together. And then we have to fix the problems in all the different provinces, the way I see it.
Okay, that's the way you see it. That's fine, Francis, and I appreciate. Yes, okie dokie. Thank you for calling from Listowel today. Karen is in Calgary. You're on the air, Karen. What's your opinion?
Well, I totally agree with Danielle. I don't think that she's a traitor to Canada. If you want to look at traitors to Canada, let's list the foreign interference MPs and senators. Shouldn't we be listing those traitors before we call an election? But no, we won't. Why? Let's just gang up on Danielle Smith in Alberta. I phoned in the other day, really tired of the East telling us what to do. Our oil is our money. We just happen to share it with the rest of Canada. If they don't want our money, see you later. We'll shut down the oil industry then. Then Canada won't have any money.
Okay. Doug Ford said yesterday, you have to put the country first. He's advocating for Ontario, but when the rubber hits the road, you have to be Canadian first, not Ontarian first or Albertan first. What about that?
Well, without an Alberta first, there is no Canada. Where do you get the money from? Where does Quebec get its money? Where does Ontario get its transfer payments? From Alberta. Alberta is going for Canada first, because without the oil industry, there is no Canada.
Okay.
Thanks to what we've had running to the ground for the last 9 years.
All right, Karen, thank you for your call. 1-833-668-2577. A couple of free lines there now. Max, you're on the air. Max, what's your opinion on everything today?
Hey, Rob,
on
how
this
you doing
Danielle
today?
Smith controversy.
Well, this has been pretty
good.
crazy
Thank
out there.
you.
How you doing today, Rob?
I'm good, thank you. Go ahead, Max.
Excellent. No, I think Daniel's in touch with Calgarians here. I'm a Calgarian electrician here, industrial, and I went to the AGM. I met the lady myself. I see that she's quite in tune with what's going on. This is the main industry here in Alberta. So to maintain our number one customer, to have that relationship open, that's so vital, so key, not only to all of the citizens here, but everything else across the board. I think she's on point. She's in tune. She's got her hand on the pulse. I do disagree with the other premiers and not just having an open mind, having a dialogue. Why slap up all these tariffs and threats that are completely unnecessary, both on our end and for the political reason of having that good relationship with our number one trading partner, who's a beast compared to us. Absolute beast. When it comes to GDP, oh my goodness. We don't... how to put it to you, and I'm sure you understand, that relationship is absolutely vital for every Canadian, not just here in Alberta, but we are the queen piece on the chessboard. So for her to play that wisely and at least have communication open, whether the tariffs are implemented or not, she's on point, hands down. And thanks be to God for giving us somebody who was at least able to step back away from the fight like an adult and say, this is my stance. I'm willing to keep communication open with our biggest trading partner. Bravo. And I cannot clap any louder for this woman. Thank you is what I want to say.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. Thank you for your calls. And more of your calls are just ahead. It's Talkback, and it's a hot one today. Trump, tariffs, Team Canada, Danielle Smith accused of not being a team player. Share your thoughts, please. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, refused to sign a letter about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs. The only Premier who refused to sign that letter. She is accused of not being a team player, not being on Team Canada, and worse, on social media, of course, called a traitor, accused of selling out Canada, of being on the side of the oil and gas industry over the national interest, of siding with Donald Trump over Canada, all of this stuff. What is your opinion on this? Tony is in Calgary. Tony, you're on the air. Tony, what's your opinion?
Hey, Rob. Hey, this is the way I look at it here.
Okay.
Danielle Smith is probably one of the best things that ever happened to this country and Alberta, for that matter. A lot of people don't understand. All they understand is money, especially the guys down east, where we support and pay a lot. And I'm going to say the lady that just spoke before me, a couple calls, Karen from Calgary, she's on the ball here. She knows what's going on. We're not selling out Canada, okay? But put it this way. When those tariffs do kick in, okay, what is the root cause about all these tariffs? Why are we putting tariffs? What benefit is it for America to put tariffs on product and drive up consumer prices and make things just that much more expensive? It's not about protectionism, because Canada's trade deficit with America is $30 billion. $30 billion. With China, it's 10 times that amount. If you strip out energy out of that equation, out of that $30 billion, 80% is probably energy. If you strip that out, they actually have a trade surplus, meaning Canada buys more product from America than the reverse. So people
this is a case that Premier Smith has been making, that if you take energy out of the equation and everything else that is left over, it's actually a trade surplus for the United States.
Everybody's complaining about, we shouldn't be the 51st state and all this propaganda. Listen, at the end of the day, tariffs are bad news for everybody. It's going to cripple our economy. We don't produce stuff like we used to here in Canada, because they talk about selling out Canada. You know when that happened? That happened 50 years ago, when with free trade. Free trade. You talk about look at our currency exchange right now, 46% exchange rate. Well, what's gonna happen when the tariffs kick in? What's that going to do to the cost of living and everything else? This trade thing between North America is nothing more, in my opinion, a cohort type of action by I don't know who, but I'm very suspicious. There's no need for tariffs. There's something going on behind the scenes, and it's just to cripple the working people of this country and bury us alive, because I don't want to get in a trade war or a fight, for that matter, with our greatest trading partners, and that's the Americans. And when they sneeze, Canada gets a cold. Remember that. We're playing with fire here.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Playing with fire. Okay, Tony. Thank you. Yep. Diane in Diamond Valley. Diane, you're on the air. Go ahead, Diane. What's your opinion here?
So I actually support Danielle and what she's doing. She's representing us. Now, she's the only person who actually went down and met and spoke with Trump, and she came back and she told everybody honestly what the results were, that we better be prepared. And instead of acting like mature people doing the Team Canada thing in the meetings, they have all gone around running around like kids with their hair on fire, making public statements, and it's more public. And quite frankly, every time Justin does something or the Liberals blow up one thing, it's to hide another thing. And as for our exporting and our oil, if the country didn't have our oil, for example, if Alberta was to separate from the rest of Canada, and I'm not saying I support it or it's going to happen, but if we did, the economists have already stated that Quebec alone will become a third world country because we give them over $1 billion every year in transfer payments. Everybody in Canada lives off the back of Alberta and our oil, and yet they criticize us. And quite frankly, the statements on online and coming out of the House of Commons or wherever these politicians are. It's sticks and stones. Grow up. You're not 5 years old. Start acting your age. Start representing Canada.
Okay.
Start doing the meetings in the boardroom and not in public.
Okay, but I guess the question is she representing Canada? Is she on Canada's side or is she only on Alberta's side?
She's on Canada's side because she told them what was the result of her meeting with Trump, and she told them to get a plan in action. And all they've been doing is running around saying that, oh, the world's going to blow up tomorrow, and they're not listening to her. She's given them some good ideas, and instead they've decided to pick up their packs and go a different way. Now, all the power to them. I'm hoping that this can be resolved just as easily. But I think Trump, he sees that he's successfully dividing Canada and causing such a stir-up. He's probably rolling over laughing because they've made this so public.
Well, maybe.
But I do
thank you.
believe
Yes, Danielle Smith. Danielle, thank you. We're out of time. Danielle Smith did go to Mar-a-Lago. You said she was the only one who went. She wasn't the only one who went, of course. Justin Trudeau was there shortly after the tariff threat was made, along with Dominic LeBlanc. But whether Danielle Smith was there, Justin Trudeau was there, Dominic LeBlanc was there, nothing much seems to have come to it, because they're all saying we should expect these tariffs maybe as soon as next week, and that it will do significant harm to the Canadian economy. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is the topic of the day, and her refusal to sign a letter about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs. Your thoughts, please. Michael in Cape Breton, you're on the air. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, Rob, people after a while are that smart. They get that smart. They get stupid all over again. But the damage that they do is the people that they're talking to, they leave a generation that's totally out of tune to what affects them and what don't affect them. It was Kevin O'Leary, the guy that referred to us as Canadians as cockroaches, who invited her, made the arrangement to go down and kiss the ring of a convicted felon, a rapist, con artist, you name him, he's there. It's all there in
Justin
the
Trudeau did that too.
Well,
Justin
where the
Trudeau did
damage
that too.
was done,
Justin
Rob,
Trudeau.
was in our free trade agreements when Mulroney said, now in this trade agreement we're going to have to give up some of our sovereignty. And after Mulroney, it was Paul Martin come along. In this trade deal, remember, we're going to have to give up some of our sovereignty. And they're the ones for over 150 years that led the path.
Okay.
And the path
right.
that we're on
so
now.
I guess tariffs are good.
We don't all stand together, Rob. It's going to be nothing but chaos and hardship for the people of our country, and we don't deserve it. When Alberta
but it sounds like you're against free trade, Michael. So it sounds like you're against free trade and you're for tariffs. So you must be for Trump's position because he's for tariffs. Okay, thank you, Michael. Let's move along. Gary in Waterloo. Gosh, it's hard to get a word in edgewise sometimes. Gary, hello, Gary. Yeah, or George. Sorry, George, not Gary. Sorry, that's my fault. I misspelled it.
Looking
Go ahead.
for Gary there. No, this is George from Waterloo here.
Yeah. Hi, George.
Sorry about this. Yeah, I just what Miss Notley and whatever her views may be. I think our own premier, who is not obviously not a Justin Trudeau fan at all in the least, he said it best when he said country first. And she's got to learn that country first, like irregardless of what Trudeau does. And I know that we have to point out the things about what Trudeau and what he said and all those pieces, but this is not about what Trudeau said, because at least Trudeau came out for the country. She did not. She danced around it. She's still dancing around it. And just everyone is quick to, I'm going to age myself here, but when the energy crisis was occurring back in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Alberta who really needed the support of this country, and we stood up and we did support Alberta at that time. And then now when someone comes right out, carte blanche, makes an open blanketed statement.
I think actually you're pretty much mistaken. The energy crisis in Alberta, of course, in the Middle East lifted global energy prices.
But
and the response from the federal government was the National Energy Program from the Trudeau government in 1980. And people in Alberta will never forget and never forgive the measures that were implemented by that Trudeau government and that National Energy Program, sir. I'm sorry, but you're terribly mistaken on that. That's hour number one. Full hour ahead, right after the news. You're on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Asking for your opinion on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's refusal to sign a letter about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs. The only premier who didn't sign that letter, and she's accused of not being a team player, of not putting the country first. What is your reaction? She's been accused of selling out the country, and worse. She's also, and we've heard this today, it's been said she's defending her province. She's defending her province from a hostile government in Ottawa. Maybe it's both. I'd like to know your opinion. 1-833-668-2577. Todd, up next. Todd's in Halifax. Thank you, Todd, for calling. What's your opinion here?
Hi, good day. Calling,
yeah.
I guess it could be perceived that Danielle Smith is not a team player. However, I would counter that. I mean, that's a perception. I'm calling from the East Coast, and I have nothing but full support for Danielle Smith. She's standing up for her province, and that is what she was elected to do. What would be her alternative? There was opportunity years ago to run pipelines from coast to coast that taps to be open and supply oil across the country and distributed from ports in the east and the west. But nobody wanted that. That was turned down. So what is the alternative for Danielle Smith? I think she's doing exactly what she is supposed to be doing for her province and her constituents, and I think she's doing a fantastic job.
See, the big sticking point for her is export taxes, because they would be collected by Ottawa, and that is reminiscent of the National Energy Program, and they don't like that in the province of Alberta. I didn't hear from your premier yesterday, Tim Houston. They didn't ask him any questions. I wouldn't read too much into that, I guess. But I guess, what if the shoe was on the other foot here, okay? Yeah. What if a part of this plan was, well, we're going to put an export tax on the $1 billion worth of lobster that you sold to the Americans last year? What if Trudeau told Houston, we're going to have an export tax on the quarter of $1 billion worth of crab that you sold to the Americans last year? Now, I know that's going to be tough, Premier Houston, all your fishers, and, your fleets will be idled and your fish plants will close, but just suck it up and do it for the country, be a team player. You think Tim Houston's signature would be on that letter?
No, of course it wouldn't be, and nor would any other province. So that's what this is all about. Number one, the Liberals are not. They're not oil friendly. Our current federal government, they're not an oil friendly government. That's got something to do with it here. Individual opinions from each province, I suppose. But Alberta, they supply. Well, they're the lifeblood of the transfer payments from coast to coast, from every province, and that seems to be that's being ignored. And I don't live in Alberta. I'm from little old Nova Scotia, but I think they're doing exactly what they should be doing, 100%.
Okay, thank you. I listened to Doug Ford yesterday. The previous caller in the first hour mentioned Doug Ford. Boy, you could tell he wasn't impressed with Danielle Smith. He basically accused her of not being a good Canadian, seemed to question her patriotism. You have to put Canada first. You have to put Canada first. Fight for your region, but put Canada first. It's like watching mommy and daddy fighting to witness these two in action sometimes. But again, if the shoe was on the other foot and the Liberal plan out of Ottawa was to stop sending car parts to Michigan, how would Doug Ford react to that? You think he'd be on board with that? Do you think he would think that's a great idea you've come up there, Mr. Trudeau? You think he would have signed that statement? If the plan is to put an export tax or curtail exports of auto and auto parts shipments from Canada to the U.S., I doubt it. Daryl is in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Hello, Daryl in Halifax. Go ahead, Daryl.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm good, Daryl. My head is spinning a little bit today, but I'm just trying to keep track of it all. It's so busy. But but what's your opinion? Yeah.
So my opinion is probably a little bit more moderate than what most people call in. Like it's either one way or another. It can be both ways. She can be standing up for her province and jumping on the Canada train at the same time. Now, the thing that I think a lot of people have, a lot of issues that people have with this is that she's a big fan of Jordan Peterson and Kevin O'Leary and all these, I'm going to call them whack jobs for lack of a better word, that she listens too much to this stuff.
Okay.
There's still half a province in Alberta that doesn't support her. So you kind of got to play both sides of the fence on this. You don't want to put too much out there for Trump, but you want to put enough out there for him to know that the country is not going to take his bullying. And I don't think they should. Honestly, I think Doug Ford did the right thing by putting a hat on and just, sticking a finger in his eye, basically, and saying, we're not going to take your stuff. Now, Ontario's probably destined to lose how many jobs, like in manufacturing and car parts and that sort of thing?
Well, the estimate from, according to Doug Ford, he had his people in his Department of Finance look into it. The estimate is 500,000 jobs.
Wow. That
just
is
in Ontario, sir. Just in Ontario.
That is a massive, massive blow.
We basically double the unemployment rate in Ontario.
Oh, just in a snap of a finger. And I mean, that is horrifying to even think about, that our biggest province is going to get crushed.
David, what was, David, just let me bring David on. There was some new number crunching out of British Columbia today on how many jobs it would cost British Columbia. 186,000 or something like, what was it? David?
Yeah, that's just coming in from our newsroom in Vancouver. It's 124,000 fewer jobs by 2028. Unemployment rate in BC rising to 7.1%. $69 billion that would cost the BC economy. The finance minister for BC figures. That's new data out just in the last half hour.
Okay. So that gives you a sense of what's on the line here, economically.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Yeah.
Economically, the country is going to be in big trouble. And I'm sure that all these premiers that were sitting there in this press conference or signing this communique or whatever it is are cringing at the thought of this much job loss and this much economic loss in their provinces. But at the end of the day, they want to be part of the federation that stands up and says, we can't let this man do this to us, because Trump can put it on and leave it on for however he wants. His country can probably deal with it for however many years. But certain sectors of their society is not going to like the fact that we put tariffs or we put export levies or whatever on any of our products going down there. It's going to hurt them in a big way. And that, I think, is the point, is to try to hurt certain sectors of their economy and force them to sort of, put pressure on Trump to sort of back off a little bit. I think that's what I think that's what it all boils down to, essentially. But
okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you, Daryl from Halifax today. Appreciate it. Lots more calls to get to here, so we'll have to move along. Appreciate it. It's Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. Trump, trade, tariffs, and not Trudeau today, but Danielle Smith. Is she part of Team Canada or not? She didn't sign that letter. Have your say here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's get more of your reaction on Danielle Smith's refusal to sign this letter about Canada's response to the threat of tariffs. Stephen is up next. Hi, Stephen. You're on the air. What's your opinion here, Stephen?
Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Stephen. Go ahead.
Good. I just want to start by saying I've met Danielle Smith. I served her. I'm in the hospitality business. I served her lunch, and she treated me very, very well. So, but in regards to this topic, I'm glad you approached the National Energy Program, because I remember the 80s in Alberta when that economy got crushed. And it seems like it's just the longevity in that program is continuing today. And a lot of people across the country don't realize how many people go to Alberta to find work, to support their families, and support themselves. And I think that she's doing what is proper and sticking up for her province and the jobs. I think it's important.
Okay. So this idea she's not being a team player, what do you think of that accusation? Or worse, I mean, people are calling her a traitor, for crying out loud.
Yeah, well, I'm in Ontario right now driving around with Alberta plates on my car, and I'm waiting for the weather to abate so I can drive home. I don't buy that for a minute. I just don't. I really don't. And I mentioned, I know people here who have their kids have gone out there to work to support themselves and their family. So as far as being a team player, I think she's supporting everybody in the country. And
members of my own family who have done that. Yeah.
Pardon me?
I've had members of my own family who have done that. Who've gone.
Yeah. So I think it's win-win for Canada, and the oil business is paramount, not only to the Alberta economy, but the Canadian economy and everywhere else. So, I mean, we got to keep working. We got to keep eating. So I don't know. I think she's doing the right thing. And again,
thank you, Stephen.
The National Energy Program. I saw people. I was there. I was at the Holiday Inn downtown Calgary working, and I saw it was flush with oil people nightly. I was busy making great money, and within a week, that economy was crushed after that program was installed. So it's devastating to that economy if this goes through.
All right, Stephen. Thank you. Stephen. Takes us to another conversation, but it's important. You kind of have to understand the history. The idea of an export tax on Alberta oil and gas to the United States, I think it will always, always, always be a non-starter for so many of our friends in Alberta. And I think the sooner you realize that, you get clarity. An export tax collected by Ottawa, where the money goes to Ottawa and is spent by Ottawa, most likely in Quebec and Ontario or Atlantic Canada, but not in Alberta, was a key component of the National Energy Program of Pierre Trudeau, Marc Lalonde in 1980. And now here we are, 45 years later. But in Alberta, they've never forgotten, and they've never forgiven that government, that Trudeau government, what it did to the Alberta energy sector with the National Energy Program, and the businesses that failed, and the people who were thrown out of work, and the parents who lost their homes. They've never forgotten that. So the very idea that Ottawa, again, decades later, would collect a tax on Alberta's oil and gas so it could spend the money, quite likely advocating against Alberta's interests, that is just not part of, certainly, Danielle Smith's DNA. She clearly views that as surrendering authority and sovereignty over Alberta's energy wealth to Ottawa. And that is just not going to happen on her watch. I'm Rob Snow. We'll get more of your calls coming up here. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's get right to Brian in Kitchener. Brian, you're up next on the Danielle Smith controversy. Go ahead.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm
with
good.
Danielle Smith, I've been watching her for some time now. At least she can carry on a conversation. And as far as Trudeau and sitting down in the conference and agreeing with everybody, well, Trudeau hasn't agreed with Alberta. Like, he's been their downfall as long as he's been in office. And as far as Doug Ford goes, Canada first, well, I guess it was Doug Ford first with that land deal that he was involved with.
Oh, you mean the Greenbelt stuff in Ontario, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, was it Canada first then?
Yeah, I don't want to get too sidetracked into that
I
whole
agree.
thing.
I agree with
right.
it.
But I will
just,
tell you this. Look, you're in Ontario, okay? For our listeners who are not in Ontario, I would remind them. For Doug Ford, there are Ontario politics at play because he wants to call a snap election in Ontario. The election in Ontario isn't supposed to be until next year. But Ford has long had this plan in his head. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send everyone $200. Whether they need the money or not, everyone's going to get $200, and then I'm going to call an election. So he is really, really playing up this whole Captain Canada thing right now,
who's paying
for
for
sure.
That $200?
Right.
Who's paying for that?
Well, it's your $200 to begin
I know.
with.
I know. Keep our money. And so Trudeau, like anybody that was sitting down at that meeting the other day, with that televised, it's like, are you kidding me? I wouldn't even be sitting at the same table with him. I don't blame Danielle Smith one bit. Like, I wouldn't even want to be affiliated with Trudeau. But I mean, all he's going to do is give our money away to any other of his charities. Like, how much money do we have to give to other countries for different wars or for different women's groups? Like, we got homeless people all over the street, and I think
we're wandering a little bit away. We're wandering a little bit away from the topic, Brian. So I'm going to move on and get to. That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to go to Ron. Is up next in Calgary. Hi, Ron.
Hi, actually, Torrington. It's Ron and Danielle. Thanks for having us. It only seems common sense for me to think that in our market, it's best interest to do what Donald Trump wants. Like, he wanted to hire more border security and stop the flow of drugs. That was the start of this tariff talk. You should have bent over backwards then. And he's the type of fellow I find is, thinks himself very important. And if you play on that, give him what he wants. Maybe you're not going to be fighting over these problems. And I get he's not wanting Canada with allowing tariffs to operate.
I'm not really sure if that's what he wants, because what he wants seems to be a moving target. Okay.
Right? Yeah, but wasn't that the start of the talks?
Well, I don't know. I found it really curious what Steve Bannon said this week. We have some audio of this. That there's this idea in Trump world that taxes, like income taxes, are too high for Americans. And they want to lower taxes for lower income people, middle class people, retirees. And one way that they could lower them is if the government collected more revenue from tariffs instead of taxes. So we have to have this thing called the External Revenue Service. Play that tape, David.
We have an Internal Revenue Service that was set up basically in 1913, right? When we, after the panic of 1906, 1907, one of the drivers I would love to see in executive orders is set up an External Revenue Service, that we wouldn't just look at tariffs, but because tariffs paid for everything up until the early 20th century. But you wouldn't just look at tariffs, you look at everything about how you can charge fees, essentially, whether that's on investment, whether that's on other things of access to this country. This is America's behind the golden door. Okay, and this market's the most robust, lucrative market in the world, and we shouldn't just let people have access. We shouldn't let foreigners have access to this market and to the American people and American citizens for free. So I think I would love to see something that set up an External Revenue Service in Treasury that eventually took the burden off people on Internal Revenue Service. There's no reason the American people, American corporations, even the donor class, has to pay for everything.
Right. So why would I play a clip of Steve Bannon? Because soon after he said that, what did Donald Trump announce? I will create the External Revenue Service. This is News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Tell me your opinion on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's refusal to sign that letter, along with all the other premiers, about how Canada would respond to tariffs from Trump. The only one who did not sign the letter because she says she will not support export taxes or tariffs on exports of oil and gas from Alberta. Let's go to Gary. He's in Alberta. Gary, you're on the air. Go ahead. What's your opinion here, Gary? Do we have Gary there? No, I don't think so. I think we lost Gary. How about Willard up next? Willard, are you there?
Yeah, it's Willard here. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, Willard.
Rod.
I got you.
Yeah, all I want to say is that, where was Eastern Canada when we wanted to put in the Eastern pipeline, or the Northern Gateway, or the one down to the U.S. where Biden canceled? Nobody in Canada stood up, for Alberta at that time. And, I've never one time heard any of the provinces thank Alberta for all the equalization payments that we have sent them. They're all quiet about that.
Well, we have heard that expressed today on the air from people in other parts of the country. We have.
Yeah, there's little to
pretty
zero
rare,
appreciation at all,
Yeah.
And, all the pipelines they canceled, and now we're supposed to suck up to, jump in circles and hoops just to help Doug Ford in his election, basically.
Is that how you see it, sir?
Yeah, that's how I see it.
Okay.
Really all I have to say, Rob. So.
Okay. Thank you, Willard, for saying it. Yeah. There could be other motivating factors behind Danielle Smith to take a pass on signing that statement outside of, the suggestion of curtailing energy exports or export taxes. I think one of them she outlined very clearly a few days ago when she did her news conference. And to Willard's point, she is saying, you people in Eastern Canada and you people in British Columbia, put us in this position. You put us in this position. You left our oil stranded. And we only have one customer as a result, and that's the Americans, and that we wanted to sell more of our oil to Canadians in the East, but you wouldn't let us. We wanted an Energy East pipeline. So did a lot of people in Atlantic Canada, by the way, wanted an Energy East pipeline that would have ended in St. John, New Brunswick, but you sided instead with Quebec nationalists and radical environmentalists and only the First Nations leaders that agreed with your worldview, because not all First Nations leaders are opposed to natural resources development. And I have not forgotten clowns like Denny Coderre in Quebec cheering and dancing and celebrating the demise of the Energy East pipeline. I doubt they've forgotten it in Alberta, and the same with Northern Gateway. That would have gone down into Kitimat, and how Trudeau killed that with his anti-tanker bill and his anti-pipeline bill. Willard, thank you for calling. To Tom in Cambridge. Tom, you're on the air. Tom, go ahead.
How are you doing today, Rob? Sounds like an interesting topic. Well,
it's very busy
I guess
today.
You could
yes.
sort of say what Danielle Smith's philosophy is that then Sean McKenna, when we had the referendum about Quebec and everything else, that part of Canada abandoned the Eastern or the Maritimes for that decision. That Sean McKenna was left holding the bag for the referendum about Quebec becoming part of Canada. President Joe Biden was the one on the American side to cancel the pipelines going in. So there's a lot of mitigating factors here. But if you're going to show a united front, whether you like it or not, show the united front. There could be we don't know. And again, we're just the people here who pay taxes, but we're just common people here. So if Trump could get through the next 2 years and then have the Senate and the runs for the Congress and the Senate again, things could possibly change. You just don't know. But to stand there alone and say, well, Eastern Canada didn't support us and that, well, Alberta benefits a lot from a lot of other things. So it comes two hands. I'm not going to say that Alberta's being hard done by, because when our gas prices are low and Albertans pay lower gas prices there in Alberta than someone does in Newfoundland or Nova Scotia, they're not crying the blues then. I can understand it, but I'm going to say, if you're going to be united, be united. We can deal with the other stuff on the other side. But if you don't want to do it, then you're also going to get fallout from people who are saying, well, here you go. Danielle Smith is taking a stance, and she's being a separatist.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Okay, fair enough. John in Calgary. John, you're up next, John. Go ahead, John.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome,
just
John.
have a couple comments. Yes, I think Danielle Smith is looking after Alberta.
Okay.
But I also believe that she's also looking after Canada. If we get into a tariff war with the United States, all of Canada is going to lose, and transfer payments are going to go down, so everyone's going to lose from that. So I think she is a team player, but I don't think the other premiers are getting that. She's just trying to help out Alberta, and also I believe she's trying to help out Canada as well.
Okay, thank you, John, for your call. Look, I would encourage people, read this column today from Chris Varco in the Calgary Herald, because he actually reached out to various experts on what they think of this idea. For example, an export tax on Canadian energy exports as retaliation for tariffs, which is something that is in the toolbox, we are told. And here's a thought for you to process. What if Danielle Smith is right and all the other premiers are wrong and the prime minister is wrong? Because the experts in this column are saying this is not a smart idea. Trudeau's approach and the premier's approach, Doug Ford, Captain Can, they think it's dumb. Even Eastern Canadian academics, hardly the hard right-wing type. I mentioned this quote, Fen Hampson, International Affairs Professor, Carleton University, co-chair, expert group on Canada-U.S. relations. What did he say? Quote, using the hockey analogy, why score a set of goals on your own team? It is quite frankly the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let me repeat that. The dumbest thing I've ever heard. Imposing an export tax on energy. The dumbest thing I've ever heard. If Trump puts the tariff on it, American refiners and consumers are going to scream because they're going to see it in the pocketbook. Let them do the yelling for us, making the situation worse by sending a message that we're ready to jeopardize security of supply would be totally the wrong message to send. And yet it would seem that Justin Trudeau or Doug Ford are saying, well, let's not rule out sending that message. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're on the home stretch now. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith did not sign a letter, along with all the other premiers and the Prime Minister, about how Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs. And she's been accused of selling out Canada, not being a team player, not on Team Canada. She says she simply cannot accept curtailing oil and gas exports to the United States or an export tax on oil and gas that will be collected by Ottawa. What's your opinion here? Mike, thanks for waiting. Mike, you're up next. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey,
Hey, Mike.
I just want to weigh in on Trump for a second. I think he's just fear-mongering us.
Okay.
He's doing this all to be an attention whore. You mean we just spent $1.2 billion at our border to protect it, but we
haven't spent any money yet to
China's
protect
the
us.
problem sending in their drugs, like the chemicals to make fentanyl, and
Sure.
the U.S. is sending all their drugs our way. So I'm not sure there. And as for Danielle Smith, I think she's a traitor.
You think she's a
straight
traitor?
up. I know she's trying to look out for the province of Alberta, but let's look at her track record. She's a floor crosser. I don't know why anybody in Alberta even voted for her when she crossed the floor from the other Conservative Party to this Conservative Party now. And those are my thoughts.
Those are your thoughts, and I thank you for sharing them. Let's go to Ernie is in Kitchener. You're up next, Ernie. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob. I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for her.
Okay.
I see what's going on. The thing that drives me nuts and is driving me insane right now with our country is how we are so divided. We have premiers speaking like they're Like, is Doug Ford our new foreign, national ambassador to the United States now? Is that the role that he's taken? And
I suppose.
They're exposing our weakness here. Like, we are so weak in here where we don't have the inauguration. Like, Danielle Smith is going to Trump's inauguration. Why is it not Trudeau? I understand why it's not Trudeau. But
maybe
why
he's
are we
not
more
invited.
focused? Well, exactly. But why is this the case here? Like, it just shows, it's embarrassing to be talking like Canada like this. How we have all of a sudden premiers. When do we talk about governors in the U.S. like this? Why is Ford on Fox News every day? Why? Like, obviously, yeah, you can go the other way too with Danielle going to Mar-a-Lago and stuff. But like, you see this stuff going back and forth, and it's just causing more division. There's no unitedness. There's this BS meeting with the premiers there. Why is it them? It should be our federal government instead of they want to play games and have whoever they're going to run on their side. Rob, I'm just sick of it. I'm very disappointed. I think it's garbage, and it shows our weakness here. Trump's completely exploiting it too. And I don't know exactly what to say. What side am I really on? I don't know, but I'm just,
right.
I'm just reading through if you're looking at a football team right now, you know what I mean? I can see all the weaknesses that we have, even just looking on the other side. Rob, it's not fun. And
no,
you see,
it's not.
And Doug Ford, like, is he already trying to gear up for his prime minister run? Like, really? You're the premier of Ontario. None of that's, you're talking more about this and trying to be the, why isn't, I understand Trudeau resigned, but still, Rob, where is the stand that Canada needs in the leadership?
I understand there's a lot on the line for the province of Ontario, the manufacturing heartland of Canada, auto parts and, fully assembled auto. It's $100 billion a year that in exports just to the United States. Okay, just to the United States. It's the second most valuable export that we have in this country is auto and auto parts behind energy, most of which comes from Alberta.
Right. And is it fair to say Doug Ford is our spokesperson for Canada because he can threaten electricity and threaten auto parts?
Well, there is a leadership vacuum in the country, sir, that we've talked about. I mean, Mr. Trudeau's got one foot out the door. He's a lame duck right now. Parliament is prorogued until beyond the third week of March, and you have people who you would think would be at least in the trenches on such a file like this, like people like Mark Carney or Christopher Freeland. What are they doing? Doing?
Why exactly?
They're pursuing their own ambitions.
And that's where it's really that part is really bothering me. And I want to say I don't even care what government's in power right now. As a conservative, I don't care. But at least then show some leadership to take care of this or help us out. But the other side now, because of the prorogue and everything else too, Trump's just picking on the weakness, and now it's just letting everybody just fight amongst each other and be like, I'm for Canada and you're not, and if you're not with this, you're a traitor. Like, I'm sick of this BS, and I'm sick of the spotlight they're all trying to get for their own personal agendas. And like I said, it's a damned if you don't, damned if you do for Danielle Smith. I feel for her, but also, too, you see it, too. She's invited. The other guys are not. Maybe she's on to something that we don't know about. Maybe it's going to help us that way. But when you have, like I said, Mr. Ford trying to, it looks like he's our prime minister.
I got you, Ernie. I got you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ernie. You're a little worked up today. So are a lot of other people. You're not alone. Such an important topic. A lot on the line. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. More of your calls are coming up on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith accused of not wearing the Team Canada jersey. What's your reaction to that? Bruce, up next. Bruce, go ahead, Bruce.
How are you doing today, Rob?
Very good, Bruce. It's a pretty busy day.
People riled up. You bet.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I support Danielle Smith 100% on this.
Why is that?
Well, I think basically because the rest of Canada isn't listening to what Donald Trump had to say. This is a qualified threat for 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the U.S. What have we done about border security? What have we done about drug enforcement crossing the borders both ways? absolutely nothing. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario have at least attempted to increase border security. Donald Trump wants an action from us. He doesn't want to impose a tax upon us. But the statistic I read was that between Canada and Mexico, listed known terrorists, 85 to 90% of them came from Canada. They got into Canada because our laws are lax and we don't properly screen people. And then they crossed into the U.S. About 10 to 15% came in from Mexico. We need to fix that problem. We should have fixed this problem years ago.
Okay.
I don't think that we're going to end up, unless we continue to stick our head in the sand and not address the issues that he's put as preconditions. Do something about that, and I think we probably see maybe some taxes, but at a lot lower rate than 25%.
All right, Bruce. Thank you. Going to wrap it up there. Let's go to Mark. I believe this will probably be the last call. Mark, I have to make it quick here, Mark. Hi there.
I'm still pounding from listening to Ernie. But anyway, I want to talk GDP. I agree with Danielle Smith. The oil sector in Alberta makes up 27.6% of Alberta's domestic GDP.
Okay.
In Ontario, the auto sector only makes up 3.8% of Ontario's GDP. Ontario's major GDP contributor is the service sector. All people doing all things for, working in.
Yeah, Ontario's economy is also much larger. It's more than twice the size of
exactly.
Alberta's
economy. That is
economy.
why Rob Ford can say he's worried about his cars, but it's only 3.8% of their GDP. The oil sector.
Yeah, but it's also the second most valuable in pure dollar terms. It's the second most valuable export that we have, sir.
That's
to the United States.
That is an export to other countries. They could probably survive without their car market because they have a larger population and GDP. If they shut down our energy, because one of your callers said before, our oil, not energy, our oil, then what will happen is we will not have any place to send our oil now because our major customer is the United States.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, that's what I had to say anyway.
Well, I thank you, and I appreciate that, and that is a point that Premier Smith is making. It's a mess of our own making. Alberta's energy industry is thriving despite the obstruction, the ideology, the incompetence in central Canada, central and eastern Canada. But what it has not been able to overcome is its reliance on one market, the United States. It is the cash cow for Alberta. It is a golden goose for Canada. And everyone in Canada would have a lower standard of living, if not for the energy riches of Alberta. And clearly, if you think Alberta will put that up as some kind of sacrificial lamb in a trade war with the United States, you are terribly ill-informed. You can agree or disagree with that position, but that is her position. This is News Radio.